Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. Today's guest is me. I'm just kidding. No, it's a discussion-based episode. I did have a guest for this week, but unfortunately that fell through, as these things do sometimes. Wishing them all the best. Hope they're safe and well. But I do have topics lined up, for such an instance. And one thing I've said in the past, both on my live streams and in previous podcasts, is that I'm very keen to do more episodes like this, where I talk to you and I basically discuss a topic at length. That could be, my knowledge on a particular topic, my thoughts and opinions on a particular topic that I've researched, or it could just be me sharing stories, which is basically what today is going to be. But it's also the ultimate test for me. It's, testing my ability to be able to do this so that I know that, if I don't have any guests for a given period, I can just keep the podcast going. And, I've done a few episodes like this. I think in total, maybe there's, I'd say somewhere in the region of about 10 or less episodes like this. Some of those episodes include the 100th anniversary, where I kind of looked back over the past year of the podcast and tried to kind of talk about what I'd learned during that time, etc. There was the skateboarding episode where I spoke about, my knowledge of skateboarding and my experiences skateboarding growing up. The wrestling episode, which for those who don't know, I'm a massive wrestling fan. So that episode naturally had me discussing all my thoughts on modern wrestling and old school wrestling and how I got into wrestling. And this topic is no different. Volunteering is something I've always wanted to do. And this will sound very silly, but I wasn't sure how to get into volunteering years ago. Sure, I probably would have done some stuff at school. I do vaguely remember in primary school putting together a shoebox of things to then send to someone in Africa, and it was like toys and stuff like that. But I never really counted that because it was like a whole school initiative thing and everyone's doing it. And I feel like often volunteering is a very personal thing. Everyone has their own reasons for why they do it and why they continue to do it. And for me, I always felt bad that I could never really give to people in a meaningful way. Now, I've never really been in a position where I've had like a lot of money. I grew up in a pretty poor household. I mean, we had what we needed. We were fine and everything, but it was difficult. So I never really had like loads of money lying around or whatever to give people. And I know that's not the whole thing. It's not like, sorry, I'm not articulating myself well at all here. I'm still a bit ill and under the weather, so I do apologize if my voice is off and if my mind is not quite as snappy as it normally is. But anyway, I never felt like it was enough to just, maybe give some people some money here and there, make a donation to a charity. I always felt like I could do more and I wanted to do more, but I just had no idea how to get into volunteering. To me, it seemed like something that's very difficult. It's about who you know, etc. And growing up in London, I guess I never really looked into it as much. I used to be that type of person many, many years ago who would write things off and come up with, reasons why I shouldn't do something, like, oh, it probably won't work out. Oh, it probably this. Oh, probably that. I didn't actually just go and look into it. And this brings us to the start of my volunteering, which was in 2020. So somewhere around September time, I started looking into it. I started thinking, you know what? I'm in this new city, Manchester. I've been living here now 6 or 7 months at that point. Now it's close to 2 years, or it'd be 2 years in February 2022 of me living in Manchester. But at that point in 2020, I'd been here for like 6 months. And, I just really like the people here, the vibes, everything. It's basically just, London, but a lot smaller and controversial, but I think a bit more culture and vibes in some areas. Not to say London doesn't have that, but there's much more of the vibes aspect to things and culture than there is like, business districts and stuff. But there is, of course, that too here in Manchester. But this is not a podcast about Manchester. Maybe we'll do one of those one day. This is a podcast about volunteering. So let's get to the point, shall we? I started looking around at different places, and one place got back to me, and I won't say their name. People could probably pretty easily find out about them and stuff, but I found a particular place, and they were one of 3, I think, that actually got back to me, but they offered me like it felt like an interview, to be honest. And this was back in late September of 2020. So I spoke to this guy, and he was kind of running me through the sort of stuff I'd generally be doing. And, I sort of spoke about the reasons why I wanted to do volunteering. I sort of said that, at the time I was unemployed as well, so I'd have a lot more time to play with. And, as with a job, I was ready and willing to learn and do lots of things, which I'm happy to say I have done since then. And we'll get into that later on. But at the time, it was just for a particular position, which was assisting the drivers of this particular charity who, I'll explain all the different services and stuff that this place offers. But basically, what I was applying for was a volunteer position to help people driving vans deliver, donated furniture, essentially, and to collect donated furniture. And so I applied for the position. It went well, got the job, the volunteer position, and that brings us to October 2020. Now, if you'll recall, around that time, we'd already been in a series of lockdowns. I'm not sure if we were in the tier system at that point, but there was a major change that happened. I can't remember exactly because, to be honest, the past 2 years is a bit of a blur for me. A lot has happened, but as it pertains to the pandemic, it's all kind of merged into one. So it's a bit weird knowing, like, was that 2021 or 2020? I don't know. Your head's all over the place. Well, at least mine is. But something major had happened. Some sort of major shift, maybe a new lockdown, heightened restrictions, something like that. I remember entering the base of this particular charity and going up to their upstairs where all the staff were. And we were sitting in some sort of meeting room with the guy who'd interviewed me. And there was maybe me and 5 or 6 others, first-time volunteers and everything. We've had the little introductory speech, and we're waiting to kind of get started or, sort of go from there. And he's purposefully keeping us in this room because there's a staff meeting going on in the main hall, and it sounds serious. It sounds like there's something important going on. I've remembered what it is now. So it wasn't a major shift or change in lockdown rules or anything like that, but there was something significant that happened, which I will get to in a second. So he's keeping us occupied while they're trying to finish up their meeting. And once they finish it, it takes longer than expected. It's maybe half an hour. And eventually the CEO and someone also quite senior at the charity come and walk in the room, and they're wearing masks. And none of us are wearing masks. At the time, the rules stated, I think, that you didn't have to wear masks. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it was just before the masks thing became fully mandatory. It was a bit of a hazy area, but the particular charity that I volunteer at is very strict and has been ever since around October 2020. Even to this day, we still wear masks everywhere whenever I go there. And this is even during the whole of 2021, where there's been points where we don't need to wear them anymore. The management team has been very adamant, no, let's just keep wearing them and just keep protecting ourselves regardless, in anticipation of changes, which inevitably, I think there's going to be some more in the coming year, not to be negative, but if you look at everything that's going on with Omicron, etc., and the current government and the way that they move and the manner that they move, it's pretty clear that we're probably heading for another lockdown or heightened restrictions in the new year. But anyway, CEO comes into the room with another member of staff, And they inform us that we all need to start wearing our masks. So we all have masks on us and we put the masks on. And then they proceed to tell us that they've had their first case of COVID ever. And now they, the person's safe, person's well, they're at home, but, obviously they have to really tighten things up and make sure that everyone's protected. And the CEO gave kind of like a 10-15 minute speech about, that situation, what they're going to change, etc. And then she sort of finished by saying, and it's perfectly understandable if you want to walk away, if you don't want to continue or start volunteering with us, we will completely understand and no hard feelings. And, it was really decent of her to lay it all out for us and be very transparent about everything. And I could tell in the room, the mood was a bit of concern. There was concern in the room, obviously, because, it's a pandemic and people's lives are at risk, so of course you're going to be concerned. But there was a bit of a shift. And I remember I sort of sat there for a minute or two, and I think I'd already made my mind up at that point. I was like, well, I'm here already. And, every time my mindset was every time you leave the house, it's a risk. If I go to the store, it's a risk. If I go to the local park, it's a risk. If someone delivers something to my door, it's a risk. So how is this any different? The only difference is I'll be exposed to more people. That's the only difference. And the way I kind of thought about it at the time, and I still think this way, is that you can only kind of avoid risks for so long. Like eventually you just have to face the music and just put yourself out there and take the risk. And that was my mindset back then. And, again, I really wanted to help people. I wanted to be there for people and contribute, especially at a time when it was really needed. In my mind, it kind of made me think, you know what, this is probably the best time to start volunteering at a time when people were probably quite scared about, going out of their house and, are scared about everything. Because 2020, say what you will, but I'm pretty sure many of us were pretty concerned back then. We've sort of got used to COVID now, and I don't think people are as scared anymore, or, we've just kind of moved on with our lives. But there is always that little element of fear of like, oh, what if I catch it? What if this happens? What if that happens? There's always that kind of mindset at the back of your mind. Mindset at the back of your mind. Thought at the back of your mind. There you go. And that's what went through my head. And I kind of felt like, yeah, my mind's made up. So it comes to the next week and I turn up, and inevitably out of 6 people, I think maybe 1-2 others, continue to show up. And this is pretty normal, to be fair, for volunteering. With volunteer places, especially in cities like Manchester, it inevitably attracts a lot of young people. And many of them come and go, as and when, because some of them are students, some of them get jobs or just don't have the time. Some of them can only commit for a certain amount of time, and that's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just how it is. But point is, there's a lot of turnover. So maybe you see one person one week and then you never see them again, or you see someone for several months and then never see them again. It's a bit weird for people like me to stick around for as long as I have, because in October of 2021, it marked a year of me volunteering. And I thought that was pretty cool. It flew by. I realized it sort of last minute. I didn't even think about it. And I was like, oh, I've been here for a year. How about that? But when I look at, a lot of the people that I've met over the past year through volunteering, very few people have stuck around. And that's just the nature of how it goes. But, I guess my point with doing this whole podcast is to share stories with you, to share my kind of story of how I got into it, why I do it, why maybe you should consider doing it, and also to share my experiences, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, everything in between. But I wanted to kind of paint a picture of how I got into it, and everything that's kind of happened at the beginning, in the middle, and where we are today. So that was how I originally got into it. And as I say, I started as what's called a driver's mate. So it's basically just an assistant. And this particular charity basically helps the homeless and people in poor income families and stuff like that. And so we get a lot of homeless people, we get a lot of people in very difficult, dire situations, and we provide a range of different services. We provide guidance, help with DWP and housing and just all sorts of stuff, all sorts of really good resources. But other than that, we're also a standard charity. So you've got like your charity shop with its furniture and stuff in it. There's a food club, we'll get back to that. A standard retail store, and a few other services. And also, they do things like they feed the homeless and stuff. They provide like a job club, like lots of really, really cool stuff. It's a real nice place to volunteer at. And that's why I've continued to volunteer, because I've had a lot of opportunities there in a range of different areas, and I've really been able to contribute in a positive way. And I really like being able to do that. I like being able to give back to a city that so far has given me so much. I really do like Manchester, I must say. Anyway, that's the position that I started out with. Basically, people purchase furniture in our store, and we deliver it to them. And all of that furniture is collected from donations. Sometimes it's from companies, but most of the time it's from people like you and me, who just decide to donate this furniture to charity, and it's really decent of them. Often we will go and pick up that furniture. And now I'm going to tell you about that job in detail. So, and I haven't even got to all the stories that I've got here to tell you, but I guess this is important to kind of give you a breakdown of a lot of the things that I do. So being a driver's mate, from the get-go, I realized that you need to have a lot of experience with heavy lifting. And they did ask me about this when I first started. And luckily, I do have a lot of experience in that area. I've worked in supermarkets, carrying around, heavy wine trolleys. I've done morning deliveries, loading stuff on and off a van and whatnot. I've worked in hospitality, carrying lots of heavy things. I've worked on farms, just doing really physical manual labor. I've never gotten any official qualifications or anything in that area, but I've done a lot of jobs that require you to do manual lifting and know how to protect yourself and how to do it. You know what I mean? And I love saying that, like, and you know what I mean? Like, as if you can turn around and be like, yeah, Chris, we know what you mean. I just assumed that you know what I mean. Of course you know what I mean. But yeah, sorry. It's not often that I do videos or podcasts like this, where I'm essentially just talking to myself and there's no response. Because normally I'm doing like live streams and, people are responding back or something like that. But anyway, I digress. You have to know how to carry heavy objects. If you don't, I know it sounds really obvious, but it's important. You have to know how to, for example, pick up a sofa, handle a washing machine, handle a fridge, handle a wardrobe, all of these various different heavy things. You have to know how to pick up a heavy box. There's a way to do all of these things, which I've learned over the years, but I would always say it's about technique. For anyone that thinks, oh, I can't lift heavy things, it's too heavy, I don't have the strength. I think, and I've learned that it's always about technique. Everyone has a base strength, which you can improve over time through just regularly lifting things. You're going to get better, just like anything else in life. The more you do it, the better you're going to get. And I think a certain degree of it is belief. You got to believe in yourself. And I know this sounds weird to think about, believe in yourself in terms of lifting things, but yes, you have to trust yourself. If you don't trust yourself and your body and trust that you know how to do this, you're going to panic. And when you panic, that's when there's problems and it's dangerous. But of course, you have to know your own strength as well. We always often go in groups of two. So it'll be a driver and a driver's mate. And that's how we do the job. And often there will be things that you can carry by yourself. They're heavy, but you can carry by yourself. But a lot of the time we will just, help each other carry those things together, because it's less effort that way. It's not as heavy. You don't expend as much energy. And, it's like the old saying, work smart, not hard. But, sometimes it's just quicker to just lift up a heavy, I don't know, cabinet and just move it to another location than it is to wait for your assistant or your supervisor or whatever to come over. Sometimes it's just quicker. But for a lot of things, there is no discussion. You absolutely need another person to help you. Things like really, really heavy wardrobes that are like 8 to 9 foot or whatever. Washing machines, especially heavy, and sofas. And sofas vary. Sometimes they're really light, but most of the time they're really heavy. And inevitably, the most difficult aspect to this job, to be honest, is getting these products into really tight spaces or up flights of stairs. I don't know if you've ever attempted to move furniture up flights of stairs in tight spaces, getting them into flats. But I can tell you now, it is very difficult, because just lifting up something is one thing and moving it from one space to another, that's pretty straightforward. You just got to have your base strength, know how to handle it, and just move it, and you just got to take the brunt of the weight for however long until it's done. But the biggest and most challenging aspect of this particular job is navigating these areas. And there's been many occasions, even recently, as recent as last week when I did it, because I do it every Monday. There will be spaces that are a surprise, that will surprise both me and the drivers, because we've been doing it for so long now, where you're like, there's no way we're getting that in. And then, but we get a feeling we need to make an effort and try and get this in, because there's a chance. And like, there was one, here you go, here's your first story. There was a couple of sofas that I was delivering to a place the other day, and I thought it was just the sofas, but that was only half the job. But we've not even been there for like 15 minutes, and we realized we're not getting the sofa in without taking the legs off of the sofa, which is pretty common. That's pretty common occurrence that you have to do that, because the doorways are so narrow. And there's different ways to get sofas into houses and flats and such, but often what you have to do is like angle them in a particular way, put them upright, that kind of stuff. But obviously it all depends on how large the gap is. If it's not wide enough, you just can't get it in. But sometimes you can, and it will require you to take legs off and stuff. And we got off to a pretty bad start. The driver that I was working with unfortunately crushed his arm in the doorway as we were trying to put the first sofa through. Don't worry, he's fine. It often happens that you get like your arm trapped or your hand trapped or something horrible like that. You just have to be careful, but hey, mistakes happen. So he's sort of resting that. I go tell him to just go chill for a second, have a cigarette, just stand there, alleviate the pain and come back to me while I'm, basically I've got a screwdriver and I'm basically taking off these legs off the bottom of the sofa. And I finished doing it. And then it's basically attempt number 2 to get the sofas in. And he leads it and I'm the one pushing, because I prefer to generally carry a lot of the weight. I feel more comfortable with that. And I like to let the driver lead and kind of guide it. I just feel more comfortable doing that. So anyway, he's guiding it in, trying to pull it in, and I'm pushing. And I basically, it's like stuck in the gap. But I quickly realized the only way this is getting in is if I shove it in with just brute strength. And this is not me trying to be like, oh, what does he think? He thinks he's Superman, thinks he's He-Man. No, I'm just saying sometimes the only way you're getting it in is by just brute force. And that's what happened in this instance. It was just brute force of me trying to shove this sofa in. After about 5 minutes of doing that, we get the first one in. And then it's like the slow realization, okay, we got the first one in. Now we've got to get the second one in, and we've got to repeat the process all over again. So we do it. The next sofa is a little bit smaller. It's not really problematic. We get it in, no worries. And then, and this probably perfectly defines how difficult this job can be. So I basically get this large wardrobe off the van, and luckily it's got wheels, so we can at least move it along the street down to the door, which is only like a minute away. And we easily get it through the front door. And the first thing that the person says, the property owner says, is, "Oh yeah, can you get it up the stairs?" And immediately the driver just turns to me and just goes, "Of course they want it up the stairs, because of course." And I just laugh, and we both chuckle, because we've been in this situation so many times when you go in these tiny flats where there's barely any space to get it through the front door, let alone up the stairs. And I just knew before I saw these stairs that it was going to be narrow. I just knew. You just have a feeling with these things sometimes. I take a quick gander at the stairs, and inevitably it's really, really narrow, like unsafe narrow. And just to make it that little bit extra harder, there's also a banister, which I don't know why this is the case in flats, of this, when they're this tiny, but I guess it's necessary for, if older people are going to live in the property. But there's like a banister on the middle of the wall going up, which again makes it even tighter. Now, whoever is guiding at the bottom generally has the easier job, because you're carrying the weight, and the other person is guiding it and trying to get it up the stairs. They've got the harder job, really. It is like Chuckle Brothers, to me to you kind of situation, but very awkward, because you're trying not to scratch the walls, you're trying not to damage whatever you're trying to get up the stairs, and you're trying to guide it. Now, the problem was, my colleague was obviously still in pain from trapping his arms and stuff, and he wants me to lead. And I think I've only led a handful of times, because as I say, always like to carry it as opposed to guiding it. But, I respect him, we work well together, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do my best. And inevitably, again, just to make it even harder, there's nothing to grip onto. We wear gloves, safety gloves that we're supposed to wear, that give us a bit more grip. But basically, if you've got nothing to hold, there's no way you're gonna be able to pull it. You can deadlift things, which you're not always supposed to do, but some situations you just have to deadlift things, and you have to use sheer strength, and it sucks, but that's the only way you're going to move it. In this instance, deadlifting wouldn't have made a difference at all. And I still had to deadlift it a little bit just to get it up the stairs, like one by one. That was basically how we got it up, because we couldn't slant it and just push it up. We had to kind of do a combination of slanting and deadlifting step by step. And the whole time I'm just like, it's going to fall, it's going to fall, it's going to fall. There's no room. And what we had to do was deadlift and twist and turn it and push it into the room to the left of me. And I'm desperately trying to push it. I can't see what I'm doing, because I can't see the floor. I can't see how close it is to the door frame or anything. And I'm the whole time I'm like, oh, I don't want to drop it. I don't want to drop it on my colleague. Like, it's a bloody nightmare. And I've been in this situation, I can't count how many times. It's just part and parcel of delivering furniture, unfortunately. But I twisted it in with the help of my colleague, and we managed to get it in somehow. And we were sweating. That was our first job of the day, and it took us, in total, probably about 35 minutes. Bear in mind, we've got God knows how many other jobs and collections to do for that day. And obviously the property owner was really happy with us. Like, thank you so much. We were happy because, look, it's a charity. We want to help people. That's why we're there, right? And but I can tell how frustrated my colleague is, because he's in pain from that injury, and he's just like flabbergasted and hot and sweaty, and it's just it's not a good situation to be in. And the property owner's like, oh, thank you so much, guys. And he just turned around and was just like, that's our first job. Like, what more fresh hell is there going to be? And inevitably, there was just more and more hell the rest of the day. But, we just got on with it as best we could, because that's all you can do, But that's just to give you a snapshot of what that job is like. And we'll come back to sharing some more stories about me assisting on the vans, because I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about the other things that I've done at the charity away from the driver's mate position. So when I'd been there for about maybe, I want to say 3 or 4 months, something like that, I'd said from the get-go that I was interested in doing a lot of different things. And I have done. So, for example, as you guys know, I'm a musician. So I've done a few charity streams where I've played music to people either via Zoom, who are followers, patrons of the charity, or clients of the charity. Like, we played live music to them, or we've had people on the site listening to us play, and we've managed to entertain them. Like, I remember vividly one time there was a homeless man that actually came in, and it was really nice. We were able to, he was able to sit on the couch, feel comfortable. We were able to play music with, and he was able to spectate and join if he wanted to. And it was a nice environment. I was really happy that I was able to entertain him and make him feel comfortable in that space. So that's an example of something that I've gotten to do as well. I often get asked to run their food club, because they have like a little mini, I suppose, mini shop, I guess you could call it. But because of COVID, it's set up in a way where you're not allowed into the little shop, and there's me and another helper who basically get the food items for you. And that's just the system that we've operated throughout the whole pandemic. And I think it's protected people a lot. We're very careful with cleaning routines, constantly, wiping over surfaces, changing our masks, wearing gloves, all of that stuff, and protecting the people that come in. And you meet a lot of people through that who are, as I say, homeless, street homeless, or they're in low-income families. And you got to use your brain. I mean, obviously, but you've got to kind of think about what stuff is going to be most useful to them. Like, especially like street homeless, they don't have access to cooking facilities. They don't have access to, a lot of different things, refrigeration units, for example. So you've got to give them fresh food. I think my best days running and working in the food club have been the days when I've been able to give them free stuff. Because if you're homeless at this particular charity, you do get free stuff, but you get a set amount of items that you can get, basically, with the credits that are given to you. And it can be kind of limiting, especially if you don't have access to cooking facilities or refrigeration units. But there's been days when we've had fresh fruit and veg that's free that we can give out, because it goes out of date quickly, so we don't kind of penalize people for that, whereas everything else is it has a long life date on it, so we kind of treat it as it's like a standard store. Imagine you have like a mini shop, but instead it's in a charity, so it's kind of run in a unique way, but it's for people. And just to explain a little bit more, the homeless people obviously don't pay. They get like a credit at this particular place that I volunteer at, and they get those credits for free, and it's equivalent to like, I think, £20, which covers the whole shop and everything, and they can get whatever they want, and it's like 10 items. And I think for anyone who isn't homeless, they get a smaller voucher, but they still have to pay towards it, like a little amount, like maybe £5, and they get like £15 credit, something like that. So it helps everyone. It's figured out in a way that it's fair to all. But I've been especially happy on those days when I've been able to give out more. And for instance, I have a story here that connects to this particular job that I've done here and there, which is there was a homeless African guy that came in. And we, as I say, we get a lot of homeless people, we get a lot of people in dire situations. But this one stood out to me, and I remembered it because I could just see straight away, the first time I met him, the kind of look of stress and frustration and fear and upset all in one. He was agitated, he was stressed, you know. I don't even think he was really in the right mindset to be getting food, you know, like he needed it. But you know, like when you're so stressed out and worried about things that the last thing you can do is eat or think about food. It was kind of like that sort of situation. And, you know, I helped him get things, but the whole time he's kind of murmuring about, oh, well, what about this situation? I don't know what I'm going to do. Don't know what I'm going to do, you know, and I'm just kind of trying to reassure him and get his food shopping done for him. And then right at the end, he starts confiding in me and he tells me that, you know, he's recently come to the country, maybe a couple of months ago, something like that at the time. And, you know, he's working with the local councils to find a place that he's trying to get up on his feet, but he's just kind of fallen on hard times, you know, and during COVID, it's even much more difficult. And he told me that he's sleeping rough at like the airport and other places, just sleeping rough, not knowing what to do, and just very worried and concerned. And he said that he'd registered for housing and he was waiting to hear back, but he kept saying, what am I going to do? Hello, Windows. What am I going to do? When are they going to be able to help me? I can't find anywhere. I don't know what's going on. You know, what's going to happen? And I just didn't have the answers for him, unfortunately. I didn't know what to say in that moment. I knew I needed to listen, and I did. And I tried to reassure him as best I could. You know, I told him that you're on the system, like they're aware of you, they're looking out for you, they're trying to find you a place. Try to take solace in that, and you know, just keep showing up here and keep trying your best, just keep persevering, and things will work out. And it felt like very empty words for me. I remember he walked away and I just felt so helpless and bad in that moment. You know, I really wished I could have done something to help him. Fast forward 3 weeks later, and he comes in, and I don't know if he recognizes me or remembers me, probably not, but he's got a bit of a skip in his step. He's got like a fresh haircut. He's looking good. You know, he's clearly got some new clothes. He's vibing. He's looking good, and he's just in a good mood. And I asked how he was, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you." And he's just really kind of, yeah. I don't think he remembered me, but it made me so happy to see that he was happy and doing well. And that's one of the biggest kind of pluses of volunteering that you get these situations where you help people over time and you see them prosper and get into better situations. For example, there was a lady that dropped by our volunteering space last week, and she'd been homeless and she had a whole story, and she rode up in a car with her friend with a ton of donations. Excuse me. Sorry. Still dying from this illness. Touch wood, I don't. She must have had about, I want to say 50 packages. I think it was clothes, bits and bobs, maybe toys, and food as well. Just a whole car full to the brim with stuff. And she starts talking to some of our staff, and she said, "Hey, yeah, I just wanted to give back. I'm in a better position now. You helped me when I was homeless last year." And I think one of the people there remembered her, and they started having a long conversation about that. And that, again, another thing, made me really happy to see that, you know, because it gives you hope. It makes you realize no matter what kind of position you're in, whether you're street homeless or in a low income family, and you're hoping that things will get better, they do get better. They can get better. You just got to hang in there as best you can, and you know, make use of those services that are available out there, such as your local charities, because there are people out there and services out there for you, and places that want to help. You know, try not to lose sight of that. Try to remember that there are always people out there that care and want to help you and want to be there for you. So I just want to say that and make a note of that real quick. But yeah, I see a lot of those people come in regularly, and it just makes me really happy to be able to contribute to their lives in a positive way, to know that I've put some good into the world. It's very easy to take from this world and take things for granted, to take what you have for granted, and we're all guilty of it. But I suppose, again, the overarching message of why I'm doing this episode, and believe me, I've wondered a lot whether or not I should do this episode. I thought maybe doing this episode would be in bad taste. I thought maybe, it would kind of make it seem like I'm trying to vie for attention and be like, oh, wow, look at me. Aren't I good? I did some volunteering, pat me on the back. And I've had people tell me that, no, you should share your experiences. It's positive. Maybe it will encourage and inspire other people to do it and take part. And I think this is the biggest reason why I'm doing this episode and sharing this with you, because I really want anyone out there that's listening who might be interested or is thinking about doing volunteering, absolutely, please do consider it. It will be one of the best things you ever do with your life. And the most amazing thing about it is it's always beneficial. No matter how small it is, whether you're doing a few hours a week or several days a week, you are changing people's lives for the better. And I think that's a noble pursuit, perhaps maybe one of the most noble pursuits out there. I'm so sorry, by the way, my voice is just dying by the minute. Maybe this wasn't the best time to do this, but I was determined to do an episode today and get an episode out for you. And this episode's been a long time coming. I actually thought about doing a YouTube series where I would discuss all of these. And I shelved the idea because of what I said before. I thought maybe it was in bad taste, or maybe it would just not convey the right message. But there's a lot of experiences that you have through volunteering, because you meet so many people in so many different situations, so many different backgrounds, and it really gets you thinking. It makes you reflect on your own life, makes you more grateful for what you have. It helps you to put things into perspective. And I think it kind of forces you to get the best from yourself. One of the things I neglected to mention is that in those situations, for instance, when we're working on the vans, there are many situations where we probably won't be able to get those, that furniture into those properties, but we give it our absolute best. We do everything we can to make sure we absolutely gave our best effort to get that furniture in there. Because sometimes, you're delivering to people. I remember one guy we delivered to, it was literally, he'd been street homeless maybe a month prior to getting that place. And he was an older gentleman. He was in his 50s, maybe. You could tell he'd been on the streets for a while, and he was so excited to just have somewhere to be and to live. He was so grateful, and he got excited, and we were delivering all these things into his room, and he was like, oh, do you think it would look better like this? Or maybe I could put something here. And we took a minute just to have a chat with him and give him some advice about, how he could lay the place out. Because here's another element to this. There are a lot of jobs that you do as part of volunteering, but perhaps the biggest thing that you do is you have conversations with people. One of the things that the CEO says at the place that I do volunteering at, she says, we're all about giving people their dignity, about making them remember that they are human beings, and just because they've fallen on hard times doesn't mean they deserve to be treated with anything other than respect. One thing she said that really hit me one time, because she does these regular meetings and has done since the beginning of the pandemic, where she gives like information and updates about COVID and all sorts of stuff. But she said, one thing you should always remember, and I think this is important for life as well, with anyone that you're dealing with, whatever situation they're in, just look into their eyes. Look straight into their eyes. Don't look at their clothes or, whatever. Just look at their eyes and see the human being, see their soul, and talk to that person show them respect and show them love and warmth and compassion. And that's something I try to do all the time, whether it's with volunteering, with family, with friends, whoever. I always try my very best to make sure I'm being nice and showing people the best side of me, no matter what I'm going through in life, because this world needs compassion. We need good people. The world needs a lot more of that. And I think sometimes it's not really appreciated just how important that is. You think sometimes the worst day you ever had in your life, worst days you've experienced, and sometimes someone will come along and just hug you or be there with you, sit with you, and just make you feel better. And that stuff is the sort of stuff you cherish, forever. You cherish those people and you cherish those experiences because it reminds you that, there is such a thing as, faith in humanity. There is such a thing as a good soul, a good person. There are things to live for, and there are good people out there, and there are reasons to live. There are reasons to continue going on. And once you've experienced that, share the love. That's what all those great songs are talking about. You got to share the love and share the kindness amongst the world, and make that one of the main things that you do in life, because Lord knows the world needs it. Anyway, enough of me going on and on. Let's share some more stories. I want to get this one out of the way because it's very depressing. And it was the first time that I got back from a job, and it kind of stuck with me. And there's a lot of deliveries that we do through the work that we do that give you that feeling. You get back from it and you sit down and you sit and reflect, and you start realizing the situations that different people are in, and you want to help them, but you just feel powerless. We were delivering to this particular gentleman who was an old guy, well into his 80s. He could barely move. He had a walker, a support worker, the whole works. And he couldn't articulate himself very well because he could barely lift his head up, and he was drooling and stuff like that. Like, he was in dire straits. It was difficult. And we came into this property to deliver a sofa, and I was not expecting to be in a position like this. It was the first time I'd seen some places that were a bit of a state and whatnot, but this was quite alarming. And I walked out feeling a combination of anger and upset and a few other things. I walked in with my colleague. We get through to the living room, and the gentleman is sitting on the existing sofa. And can I say this? How can I say this in a good way? I don't think there is a good way I can say this. There were stains on the sofa. Let's leave it at that. There were stains on the sofa, and no one had cleaned them up. I'm going to save this person's dignity just in case, the off chance that he ever would be listening to this. There's no way that that would happen, but still, I wasn't even sure if I'd share this story. But there were stains on the sofa, and I remember the first thing I thought was, how can this be? This person has a support worker. How is this allowed to happen? How is this enabled? Like, I didn't understand. I was shocked and upset and really concerned for this man, because I was like, why is this allowed to happen? How is he allowed to be in this position? Now, we're not responsible for that. We have to report stuff like that, and we did, but we're not responsible for that. but you still feel a sense of responsibility when you go in a place like that. Our job was to bring in a sofa and move the old sofa, but there was nowhere to put the old sofa. And we spoke to his support worker on the phone, and they were the best way I could explain it was nonchalant, like, oh yeah, just dump the sofa over there and everything's fine. And that was when I got annoyed, because I realized, okay, this support worker knows the setup of this place. They know that this man is probably, amongst stains and stuff and not comfortable and has to live with this, and they're allowing that to happen. And that got me very angry. And I remember saying that to my colleague, and I was really distraught about that. But I remember that a lot of the job was, we had to move this sofa away, but there was nowhere to put it. So we kind of like put it upright and pushed it to the corner of the room, but it was just obtruding his view. Like, it was horrible to just have a big sofa there with old stains on it, upright, just sitting there. Like, what are they going to do with that? But that's what we were told to do. So we did that. And then we noticed that there was some brackets. No, sorry, there wasn't any brackets left. So, okay, I should explain. So the old sofa had brackets on. Sometimes when you've got someone who's elderly, they might have a sofa that's raised off the ground. And that means that they've got brackets that the sofa's been put on, and you can adjust them upwards and downwards, basically. And but we'd moved those brackets away, and we delivered the sofa into the property. And the guy sat down, and it was a really nice new sofa. But what we quickly realized is he couldn't get up because of the nature of his condition. He wasn't able to get up again. So we knew instantly that we needed to, well, first of all, help him up. I think he went and made a cup of tea, and he got himself comfortable while we basically put the brackets down from the old sofa and then attached this new sofa to it and started working on it. And I think in total we were there for like an hour. And my colleague didn't really need my help because it was more or less a one-man job. He just needed me to like hand him things every now and again and slightly move things, but basically he didn't need me there. So I was just there, standing there in this really depressing place, witnessing all of this and feeling helpless. We finally got it done. We walked out, we sat in the van, and my colleague said, like, is everything all right? And I just told him what I told you guys, which is that I just felt so upset and angry at that situation. And he said, like, yeah, we'll communicate this information to the charity and to the support worker, but it's not up to us. Like, it's up to them to sort that out. And it made me so angry and upset to know that that sort of thing happens out there. And this is not a knock on support workers, because I know there's so many, I know support workers who are amazing people and go out of their way to help people, and there really are unsung heroes. Anyone who works in support services, whether that's for the elderly or for children or whatever, like, you really are unsung heroes, and I applaud you for everything that you do, because it is a very hard job. But unfortunately, there are a handful of people that let everyone down by being neglectful, and this is one of those situations. And I was so incensed by it and felt so helpless. And I honestly, afterwards, I wondered if I would keep going back. I thought, man, I don't know because it sat with me for a few days. I went home and I really felt concerned about that. It stuck around with me like a bad smell, or sometimes you have a bad nightmare and you can't think about anything else. It was exactly like that, but it was real. It really happened. And I just kept going over and over in my mind about it. And like I said earlier, I thought about doing a video on it, but I felt like maybe it was the wrong thing to do. I didn't want to make light of a situation like that. Not that you could, but I didn't want to I didn't want to talk about that and make content out of it. Like, oh, that time when this happened, that felt wrong to me. that felt wrong. And I still feel uncomfortable talking about it now, but I wanted to tell this story in conjunction with other stories from volunteering to give you an understanding of what it's really like. Because, as I said in the very beginning, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's funny stories, which I'll get to later. There's difficult things that happen, and then there's the worst of the worst. And that for me was probably the first time that I went into a property and walked out and really questioned if I was going to continue doing it. Ultimately, I decided to continue because I thought that it's up to people like myself who have the time and the ability to do this to kind of suck it up and get on with things, you know, and do my very best to help people. You know, it's sitting around feeling bad and stuff isn't going to change anything, but I can change things. I can help people by doing things for them. And that made me think, yeah, I need to continue doing this, regardless of the situations I find myself in or whatever difficult scenarios I find myself in. It's up to me to do my very best to help these people. And that's why I kept volunteering from that point onwards. I'll share one other more serious situation now, which, you know, given the previous story, I don't really know if it's any better. There's a guy who's a regular client of ours who I'll try not to give too many details away. But what I can say is this person is a hoarder, and I've delivered to his place many, many times. It's the sort of thing where when we pull up to the road where his property is, I immediately know where we're going, and I'm like, oh no. And it's, you know, it's always a sort of thing where the driver doesn't want to go either. And the problem is, right, when you got people that are hoarding to this degree, it's a health and safety hazard. And really and truthfully, my personal belief is we shouldn't be selling these products to them. We should kind of refuse to sell them things, because we know there's no room for this stuff, and this stuff could potentially hurt them. We do our very best to kind of clear out the situation, you know, clear out any old stuff or whatnot, but to really clear this property, you'd need to get a team of experts in there and clear the property, and it would take probably the better part of a week to do. The very first time I went in this property, we went through the front door. Normally we go through the back, but this first time we went through the front, and basically we were supposed to take out an old sofa and bring in a new one. And as soon as I walked into this gentleman's property, I looked in the living room and I saw what I can only describe as maybe like 7 or 8 layers of junk on top of each other that went right up to the wall. And there was like a tiny bit of floor space that this guy was living in, because it was difficult for him to get up the stairs and everything. And he just had this small space for a sofa, but we had to take out the old one to deliver the new one. And he didn't seem too bothered about the old sofa. He's like, yeah, just dump it out front and everything. Someone else will get rid of it. And I just felt like really concerned for this man, because it's my first time delivering to this property. I didn't know anything about the situation. I didn't know that we've regularly delivered stuff to this guy. At this point, I'm just like, oh my God, like, has he got help, assistance? Do people know he's living like this? I was really worried. And then I started seeing this guy in our store a few times, and we kept delivering to his place, but we go via the rear entrance, and there were things there that had been there for years. There was a guy I remember that I was delivering with who doesn't regularly deliver on the vans, but this one time he did, just to cover, because he now does a different job. But he basically had come with me to the back of the property to sort of observe and see if we could actually deliver this stuff, because, you know, there was a space issue. There just wasn't enough space to actually deliver this stuff into the property. And it meant that we'd need to remove stuff. And every time you go into this property, in the backyard, there's just old sofas and kitchen equipment and bathroom equipment and old chairs, and there's things that I've delivered to the property before that have just sat there since the day we delivered them and haven't moved. And this guy who was with me remarked that there was like a table and chairs in the backyard that he delivered like 7 years prior. Like, no exaggeration. He, years ago when he'd done the delivery job, he delivered to this property, and he delivered that specific set of table and chairs, which probably hadn't moved since that day, which is crazy to think about. I remember one time, the one and only time I've actually been in the property. Sorry, I tell a lie. The second time I've been in, but from the back entrance, because normally, as I say, we just deliver it to the back and it gets dealt with, or doesn't. But we had to move something out of the kitchen and then bring in the equipment that was going to replace it. And there was just no room to move. Like, my colleague was like, "Hey, have you got any space to move back?" And I'm like, "No, like, there's nowhere." And eventually, I think the property owner moved a little bit, and we had some wiggle room, and we managed to just about force in, I think it was a fridge freezer. Luckily, it was light, really, but yeah, there was just barely any space to get it in. And I remember just feeling this like real sadness, just looking at his dire kitchen, and everything about that place is a health hazard. And I really don't understand why we don't help him, or what the situation is there. Like, I try not to get too involved. I remark on these things and everything, but like, it's not ultimately, my place or position to do so. But I don't think that we should be delivering to places like that. I think, if anything, the best thing we could do is to not deliver, and to report that to some sort of authority, and say like, "Hey, this is unsafe. This person needs help." But I don't know. Let's bring this to a more positive place, because it's not all doom and gloom. There are a lot of, and I covered a couple of positive stories in the beginning of this. There are positive times, and this is one of the reasons why I keep doing it, because there's times when people are really thankful and really enamored and happy with you when you're able to help them out in a big way. One of the very first jobs I ever did, this was about a month in, the first month, went to a property, and basically the mother was at the top of the stairs, and we were delivering furniture into the living room. And she, I believe, had like a bad hip or a bad back. Like, she couldn't move very easily. And she was at the top of the stairs. And from what I understand, she was bedbound or just not able to move around. But she was able to communicate with us, at least. And she had two daughters, one of whom was, I want to say 12, 13, and the other one was probably about 7. And they were really excited. But here's the thing. The younger daughter's really excited to see us, because she realizes we can take out the old furniture and bring in new furniture. And she's just excited to see us. She's a bubbly kid. The teenage daughter, her demeanor was completely different. I rarely have ever seen teenagers that look so adult. To me, I straight away could tell that this little girl had to kind of grow up quicker than her years to look after both her mother and her younger sister. It was that kind of situation where she was almost motherly to her younger sister, because she had to be. And even when she was talking to us, obviously she's a teenage girl, so she's probably just, there's two fully grown adult strangers, it's not, you're not going to be comfortable in that situation. But she was kind of on her guard, like just very serious and everything. And I was like, okay. And they needed us to move the sofas out of the place. So we did. It was pretty straightforward. And they were really happy that we were able to do that for them when we brought in the new sofas. And suddenly the little girl was bouncing up and down, really happy. The mother was really happy. But then I saw the elder sister smile. and she opened up a little bit and had a conversation with us and was really happy. And that just made me so happy. I looked at that situation and I was like, you can tell this girl has it really hard. You know, she's having to sort of be strong for everyone. She's having to grow up faster than her years, take on more responsibility than a teen should have to take on. And here's a little thing that makes her world just that little bit better, a little bit easier, nicer furniture, and, you know, all the stuff has been removed. And she smiled. And I don't know for sure, but to me, it was the sort of smile of a person that probably hasn't smiled a lot in a long time. That was the vibe I got. And it was so nice to see her smile and to be happy. And I walked away, and I can't remember if it was me or the driver that said this, but we sat down in the van after we'd locked up. And I think it was me, actually. I turned to the driver and I just said, that's what it's all about. And he nodded and he went, yeah, so glad we were able to help them out. That's just a small example, of some of the, you know, more positive times we're able to help people out. My gosh, am I dying from this cough or what? I've been sick now for like 5 or 6 days, and it's just not gotten any better. I've taken ibuprofen. I've taken what's that thing? Sudafed. It's like my mum calls it a lurgy when it's at the back of your throat. A lurgy. It's lurking in there. A lurgy. Hopefully, I get better soon. I hope this has not ruined your experience of the podcast. I do apologise for my excuse me, coughing and lack of a good voice. Oh my gosh. I hope I'm able to finish this. Oh dear. Okay. You know, I like to keep these things authentic. I thought about editing my coughs out and stuff, but I like to keep things fresh and authentic. This is, as it is, me sitting in my room talking to you guys about my volunteering experiences. Oh dear. Okay. The washing machine. I've written these down. You can see on this piece of paper right here. I've got all these different stories that I thought of in the run-up for this episode that I've had planned for some time, but I never thought I'd actually do. The washing machine. Now, I've told this story on my live stream before. It's one of those days where, you know, sometimes in life, everything that can go wrong will go wrong. It was one of those scenarios. It was about 11 a.m. in the morning. Me and my colleague pulled up in the van in a residential district, quite close to a main road, like a minute away from a main road. And we park in the middle of the street, expecting not to be there any longer than about 10 minutes. Okay, that's why we didn't fully park up. 11 a.m. You would assume everyone's gone to work at this point in a residential area. So we just left the van there in the middle of this residential road. We'll come back to that. So we had to deliver a washing machine. That's it. Replacement washing machine, because, or was it we had to deliver one or pick one up? I think we had to, I can't remember if we had to deliver it or pick it up. I'm pretty sure we had to pick it up. Yeah, it was broken. So we were going to test it out and see what, yes, we were going to test it out and see if there was a problem with it, because the client had told us that basically every time she tried to operate the washing machine, it would overload with water. And when we walked in, bear in mind, neither of us have any official training or expertise as it pertains to fittings, plumbing, anything like that. We know nothing about this stuff. My colleague, I think he's in his 50s or something, Or maybe 40s actually. He's got a bit of experience, but he doesn't really know what he's doing. It's just novice experience. And he remarks that it's probably a problem with the fitting. It's probably not been fitted properly, and it's not actually that the washing machine's broken. It's probably that it just hasn't been fitted properly. But we're going to take it away anyway. The lady then asks us, "Oh, hey, if it's that problem, like this is my colleague's first mistake. He shouldn't have said anything. He should have just been like, okay, we're taking this." But she asked us to test out this fitting, see if we could fix it maybe, and then we wouldn't have to take it away, and maybe it would be fixed, right? And obviously, as I said before, we're always trying to help people out and deliver a positive experience to people. We want to help people out. We want to go that extra mile. That's what volunteering is all about, and charities is all about. It's about going that extra mile for people, because if you're going to help people out, you should go the full length. But as I reiterate now, we are not professional plumbers. We have no knowledge about washing machines. We start tinkering with this washing machine, or to put it more accurately, my colleague starts tinkering with it, and immediately it starts flooding everywhere, and we can't stop it. We sort of eventually stopped it, but what had happened was the pump where the water comes out immediately starts splashing water everywhere. It is like slapstick comedy. My colleague quickly grabbed it, shoved the pipe into this is the pipe that's at the back of the washing machine. Quickly shoved it into the sink that's nearby, but the sink is quickly rising, like, because there's already dirty dishes in there, whatever. It's not a viable. It's like a temporary, quick 5-second solution while we figure out what to do next. And I don't know what to do in this situation. I see that there's a nearby window right next to it. I figure, okay, maybe I can open the window up and he can shove the pipe out there, and the water will, it's going to run outside of the flat because we're at the top of a set of flats, basically. But at least it will go somewhere as opposed to in the flat, all over the kitchen floor, which is where it had been going previously. But it doesn't stretch that far. And this woman comes out of nowhere with a massive box, like the sort of box that you'd put like old clothes in storage, like a storage box, or maybe you'd put like I don't know. This is a gigantic storage box, plastic gigantic storage box, and okay, that's going to buy us a bit more time, but my colleague remarks like it's not going to last forever. We need to figure out a better, because where are we going to put this water? Can't pour it in the sink. Sink is full. So where are we going to put it? Where are we going to put this water? Bloody nightmare. And he keeps telling this woman, you need to turn the water off. You need to turn the water off now. Going back to the beginning of this story, we should have always turned the water off. That was number one. If you're gonna muck around with like washing machines or anything to do with water, turn the water off. Okay? That's number one. If there's a takeaway you get from this story, that's your takeaway. Turn the water off. But anyway, we couldn't find it. And I'm standing there powerless, not knowing what to do, because I've helped my colleague. I think at one point I took ownership of the box with the water while he was trying to help her find the water. But initially, I'm standing there like not knowing what to do. And he's not giving me any assistance because he doesn't know what to do. He's communicating to her, you need to turn the water off, because it's her flat. She would know where the water pump is, but she doesn't know. And she's like, I don't know what to do. And she's stressing out and she's really freaking out. And normally I would reassure someone in that situation and be like, don't worry, we're going to figure this out. But I really didn't know how we were going to figure that out, because I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know where the water pump is. I don't know where to start looking for that. I got no idea. I can't figure that. Again, I don't have plumbing experience. I have zero experience with this. So I'm literally just a bystander, just standing there, not knowing what the hell to do. She turns to me while she's freaking out, going, "What do I do? Where do I go?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm sorry. Turn off your water pump." So then eventually my colleague tells me to pick up the box and take over the water while he goes and finds the water, the pump to shut it off, or the valve, I should say. And I then am sort of standing looking at this massive storage box that's really rapidly filling up with water. It's getting heavier. I don't know where I'm going to put it. I'm sort of contemplating like, hey, can I maybe somehow pour it out the window? But then I've got to figure out a place to put the pipe, and already I'm freaking out because I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm keeping it myself calm, but I'm like, I don't know where to put this. This is not an easy to figure out situation. And then thankfully my colleague had found the valve and turned off the water, and so we all kind of just stop for a minute and just go, okay, let's rest, let's figure this out. And my colleague and the flat owner kind of quibbled a little bit over what to do next and everything, but ultimately we solved the situation. We took away the washing machine. I should add, it's a washing machine. We're in a tiny flat with narrow stairs. Remember what I said about narrow stairs? Now, you think a wardrobe is heavy. That's nothing compared to a washing machine. And a washing machine is easy to get to a property. It's heavy, but it's pretty straightforward. Getting it down a flight of stairs, though, dangerous, heavy, nothing to grip on. Our hands are wet from the debacle we just had a moment ago. It's really dodgy. I at several points thought I was going to drop the washing machine, and if I would have dropped it, I would have dropped it on my colleague. So it was really dangerous. And at several points, I really felt like I was going to drop it. It felt like a weight that normally wouldn't be an issue for me, but because it was so slippery, I felt I could drop it at any moment, and it was really doing a wonder on my back, really hurting my back. But we managed to get it down the bottom of the stairs, and we knew we needed to go basically to the van to get a what do you call it? I think we'd either brought a little what do they call it? A truck lift. I should know what this is. There's like a little tool that you use that you slip under heavy goods and you move them along. It's going to kill me that I haven't remembered. Pump truck. We had a pump truck. I think we had it with us already. You remember I said that the van had been parked in the middle of the road? Yeah. Well, we both forgot about that because we'd so preoccupied with this nightmare of a flooding kitchen. We hadn't even considered that, we'd been there for about 40 minutes and had left this van in the middle of, again, I reiterate, a residential road. It wasn't a main road, like in the middle of the road or something. It was a residential road. And it's like 11 a.m., close to 12 p.m. So why are all these people here? But basically, I come out of the flat, I'm standing there, and there's a woman that shouts and says, "There he is! There's the guy!" Because quickly they figure out that we're the owners of this van. And he's trying not to sort of get into any arguments when there's this big queue of, I kid you not, like 10 people crowded around this van, effing and jeffing, just swearing at him like, "Why are you in the middle of the road? What the hell are you doing? Oh, you can't park here. Oh, you can't park there, son." Just like really angry. And another thing I should add is that the name of the charity and the phone number of the charity are on the side of this van. So they've all called up and have complained, I don't know how many times, like swearing at the charity, like, get this guy out of the middle of the road. What's he doing? They have no idea what we've just been through. They're just concerned because, they need to get their cars out, which I understand. But, I don't think the swearing and aggressiveness was necessary on their part, but I digress. And my colleague keeps it together very calmly because he has to pull up the tail lift and get the van started, also while dealing with a phone call from our office with the people very angry at us, like, "Hey, you need to move, you need to get out of the way." And then there's like literally a queue of cars that also had the audacity to beep at this guy while he's moving the van. And it's like, look, the guy's moving the van. Like, he's not a magician. Give him a couple of minutes to sort this out, and then you'll be on your way. But I guess people never necessarily consider other people's situations. Some people only care about themselves. But my colleague kept it together. Props to him for doing that. For not buckling under the pressure. I'm not so sure I would have been as courteous to all the people shouting and screaming at me, but I digress. And that's how we were able to get out of that situation. And funnily enough, a week later, we ended up, me and him, on the same job, same place, delivering this washing machine up the flight of stairs this time. We got it in. Safe to say that was a very straightforward, easy scenario. And we actually didn't have any issues that time. But it was just one of those situations where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And all we could do was laugh about it, really. It was just crazy. And my final story for today, which happened last Christmas, is the mother at Christmas. And I was on a van with a guy who was unprofessional. Luckily, he's now left the charity, but very unprofessional guy who I didn't like doing jobs with. And as I say, he's left now, and I think it's all for the best, because his attitude does not belong in a charity where you're supposed to help people. As I say, we always go out of our way for people. And this guy was just more concerned with, I don't know, getting back to the depot on time, getting his lunch. I don't know. I really don't care. I was just annoyed at his attitude, because it's the only person I've ever worked with that had a poor attitude. Everyone else is awesome, and I've always had good experiences with. But this guy, I had bad experiences with. And this is a story that, as I think about it, is actually pretty big. So what happened was, we're told to deliver to this property, and we're delivering maybe, I want to say, like 10 different things. So clearly this person has just moved in, but we don't know anything about this property. I immediately see that they have like these white bars on the side of the doors, which I kind of reasoned is for elderly people, like assistance bars. And I've rarely seen them in London, but I see them a lot in certain parts of Manchester. Generally, they're on like bungalows or properties for the elderly. So I assumed, okay, maybe this person is elderly and, has trouble getting in and out of the property. What the hell are they going to do with, like, I don't know, 10 pieces of heavy furniture outside their house? How are they going to move that in by themselves? What are they going to do? And I said this to my colleague, and he just kept saying, oh, well, this is going to make us late. It's not our problem. Like, they've got to figure that out themselves. And I was like, no, we need to wait until this person comes, and then we need to figure out what we're going to do for this person. We can't just leave them with all this stuff. And yes, it's unfair. It's not right. And I was kind of putting my foot down, which is a bit weird for me, because I'm just a volunteer at this point in this situation. I have zero authority in this situation. But I still felt like I needed to stand up to my colleague, because, it's not fair. And he listened to me, in fairness to him. And we waited for a bit longer, and he kept complaining the whole time. And he was called, and he finally called the woman. And apparently she sounded really stressed and said, I'll be there in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And he said, oh, if she's not here in 5, I'm leaving. And I just get out at this point. I'm just so annoyed at this guy. And I wait. And then I see them walking down the road. And I'll never forget this. There was a woman, maybe in her 30s, and she's got 2 sons. One's a bit younger, one's a bit older, and she clearly looks very stressed. And I don't know this to be the case for certain, but I think she was a single parent mum, because I remember that same look in my mum's eyes when she was a single parent mum. It's that kind of look of like absolute just stress and worry, trying to get things done whilst everything else around you is seemingly falling apart, and you've got to look after your kid, or in this case, 2 kids. I recognized that look. I just knew that this woman needed our help. And I was all for helping her, because that's what we're supposed to do. It's a charity. That's what you're supposed to do. So I was very ready to help this lady. And she explains, yeah, we've just moved into this property. When we walk in there, like it's literally like there's a lot of refurbishment that needs to be done. There's wallpaper falling down. Like it's a sty, but she's just moved. She's just got it. I don't know that she didn't have like a husband there or something. But we moved all this stuff up the stairs, and it was really heavy and awkward to get up, but we got it up there. But there was these two really large packages at the bottom of the stairs, which had nothing to do with us, but they were really large and they were light. But she said there was no way of her being able to get them up the stairs. And that's when I kind of knew that she's probably a single parent, because if she's got no one to help her get those up the stairs, then she's probably on her own. And obviously she can't, she's got these young kids, but I think they're like 10 and 5. They're not going to be able to help her get these packages up the stairs. Even though they're light, you need some people that are adults, like to help you. She needs at least another adult to help her get them up the stairs. And we immediately I said, yeah, no problem. And my colleague, funnily enough, actually was willing to help, which surprised me because I thought he'd complain. But I think because we'd already done that stuff, we might as well, and we got these packages up the stairs. They were really light. And I turned around to the lady, and I saw in her face, she just looked so relieved and so happy that I was able to help her in that scenario. And I just said, hey, yeah, no worries. Like, come on, it's no big deal. Like, this is what we're here for. It's a pleasure to help you. And she was like, no, thank you so much. Like, this means so much. Thank you. And it really just made me happy. Like, in that moment, I realized, like, this is why we do volunteering. This is why we help people, because, people aren't always able to help themselves. And you're that olive branch, that link, that thing that can help people sometimes get on their feet or just help them along a little bit, so they're in a little bit of better of a situation than they were before. And I remember just as I was walking out, I was like, yeah, no worries, Merry Christmas, because it was 3-4 days before Christmas, I believe. And she was over the moon, is putting it lightly. And that's the story I wanted to leave you with today. If you're considering volunteering, it doesn't matter how many hours you can do, a few hours a week here and there, I'd really recommend that you consider doing it, because you're literally changing people's lives for the better. And it will be one of the best things that you do, not just for them, but for yourself. Because obviously you feel better when you help people, but it's one of the biggest things in my life. Amongst all the different things that I do in my life, it's the one thing that I can truly say I'm most proud of, because I always get the same feeling. I always feel like no matter what I do with my life, I'm at least putting some good into the world through that. Not to say I'm putting bad into the world elsewise, but for me, that feels really meaningful. And I try to find that same level of meaningfulness in everything else I do. But with this thing, it's truly a thing that I feel is needed in society. I think we should all consider doing a bit of volunteer work here and there, even if it's just for a few hours a week. I honestly feel like there's a lot of value in that. And I implore you, if you've never done volunteering before, please consider doing it. Maybe make it a New Year's resolution for next year, something to consider doing. And yeah, I love volunteering. I think I'll always do some sort of volunteering. But there's my story. There's a few stories of my experiences volunteering and the reasons why I do it and why I continue to do it. And like I said, yeah, I honestly think you should consider doing it. It will be one of the best things that you ever do. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it's a departure from what I normally do, but I think you can expect to see more of episodes like this in the future. Not to say I won't be doing the interviews, because I will, but I also want to do these episodes too, so I can test myself and share with you a slightly different version of the Christian Reeve podcast, but something that I think might have some value at least. Please let me know if there's topics that you wish for me to cover in the future. I'm more than happy to take suggestions. And most importantly, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you got something out of it. Thank you so much for listening. Be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.